Welcome back to the NW Sportscast. Some exciting news tonight. Bryan Woo, he is back with the Mariners. Not sure who's getting sent down, but Bryan Woo making his debut on the season tonight. Drew and I are going to be there for the game, so that should be awesome.
Live post-game, maybe?
Live post-game from T-Mobile. If that's what you guys want, comment down below. But yeah, Bryan Woo, super exciting. Emerson Hancock, he's back down with the Rainiers. He'll be starting for them. And then Bryan Woo joining the Mariners rotation should be hopefully an improvement over Hancock. Drew, what do you expect from Woo in his first start of the season?
I expect him to be a little rusty, if I'm going to be completely honest. This is a guy that has really, really good stuff. He's a super unique arm angle. He has a good fastball. But, last year sometimes early in games he would get really lit up. You saw that at his first ever career start against Texas. You saw that a few more times throughout the year. I would not be surprised if he gave up 2, 3, 4, 5 runs in those first couple of innings. But then I think he'll settle in a little bit. He will really get going at T-Mobile Park. It'll take him a few innings to get equipped to MLB level hitters. But once he does, I think he'll be right off and doing really good. I'm very interested to see how long Scott Service lets him go and what the leash on him is. His elbow or his shoulder injury, inflammation in his right shoulder, no joke at all, Levi. So I'm interested to see what his leash is like, but I expect a pretty good start if he can get out of the first few.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I think the leash tonight, I doubt it's longer than 6 innings. Honestly, for me, I'm hoping can he just give us 5 and maybe allow 3 or 4 runs. I would not be mad if he goes 5 innings, 4 runs. Obviously, that's maybe not amazing, but for his first start of the season, coming off an injury, that's about as much as I'm going to really kind of expect. So yeah, just don't blow up in your first start and show us that you're still working your way back. I don't need him to go 7 innings tonight.
Yeah.
Although it would be nice because the bullpen's been taxed a lot lately. But I mean he's solid tonight.
Yeah, I'm just pulling up his baseball savant. The big thing last year for him was his fastball run value versus his breaking run value. 86th percentile for fastball run value, which is well above average. But then you go down to the breaking run value, it's all the way down at 12%. So that is just total opposite on different ends of the spectrum.
Right.
How does he fix this in year number 2?
I think part of it is just continued practice and just improving. I don't know, man.
I mean, maybe you sacrifice a little bit of that fastball. Maybe that 81st percentile maybe will fall a little bit, but I think if you raise that breaking ball value, that's really where his he can turn into that quality 3 or even 2 in the MLB.
Yeah, I mean that's if you're a fastball only pitcher, unless you're throwing 97, 98, 99 miles an hour consistently, it's hard to be a truly successful pitcher in today's MLB. And right. So I think you got to improve those breaking balls, and I'm sure that was part of his offseason plan as well. Just getting more active, getting more spin on those breaking balls, getting them to break more, and just being able to fool hitters, right? Because if you can't fool the hitters, the hitters are going to get the best of you.
Yeah, that's true. And he's throwing his fastball almost 75% of the time. So, I mean, between the sinker and the four seam, almost 75% of the time. So, hitters really kind of know what to expect. His fastball is just so good that a lot of the times it pays off. But you've seen the Mariners be able to develop secondary pitches for a lot of their guys. You see that with Logan Gilbert. That was the big one. He came in first year, pretty much his only valuable pitch was that fastball.
Yeah.
And then year 2 and year 3, obviously he added his splitter, his changeup, etc. That got him a lot more swings and misses, got a lot more outs at the plate. I think Bryan Woo needs to learn from a Logan Gilbert. I'm sure there's lots of pitching coaches that have been working with him over the offseason, but this shoulder injury is really a wrinkle in his trajectory as far as him continuing to improve as an MLB player. I really hope that the inflammation is nothing more than just that inflammation, and he goes out there tonight and he does fine.
Yeah, I think he will. Obviously, they definitely took this. They gave him his time to recover because initially we heard maybe he'd miss 2-3 starts, and ends up missing 7. So I think hopefully that means that they're not rushing him, and they really do feel like now he is ready to go, ready to get out there. And he doesn't need to take a Logan Gilbert step. Just do what Bryce Miller's done, right? Bryce Miller all of a sudden this year throwing his splitter, right? And it's all of our pitchers now with the splitters, right? Because Kirby throwing him one too. But if Bryan Woo can follow the Bryce Miller model, just add one pitch for this year.
That's hard to say though, Levi. Bryce Miller has made an enormous step up.
Well, okay, I'll give you this. Bryce Miller's stats have improved a lot. His FIP not as strong. His underlying numbers have improved, but I mean Bryce Miller's still not an ace pitcher right now. No. We don't need him or Bryan Woo to be an ace pitcher, but it would be nice if Bryan Woo can start developing that secondary pitches a little bit more than he did last year. It'd also be nice to see some innings out of him. Who knows, Drew? What are your expectations, not for tonight, but for the whole season for Woo? Like, as far as innings go, do you think he's going to surpass that 100 inning mark? Do you think he's going to surpass that 130 mark? Yeah. How much do you think he's going this season?
I think you're in between that 100 inning to 130 inning mark, right around there. Scott Service last year had a leash on him. He was pulled with 80 to 90 pitches almost every time out there.
Yeah.
It's getting to a point where sometimes he would throw 4 scoreless and he would leave the game.
Yeah.
Because it just took him a while to get batters out, and he would have to battle, 2-2 counts, 3-2 counts all game long, and he kind of fought out of those positions. But it kind of all ends up, well, what's the leash that Scott Service is going to give him? I think these first couple of starts, it's going to be shorter. Obviously, he's got that shoulder injury. You mentioned, he had ample time to recover. Partially, that's because Emerson Hancock was pitching pretty well.
He was doing fine.
In all honesty. Obviously, his stuff still isn't great, but it worked out well for him. So Bryan Woo has lots of time to recover. I think that Scott Service, these first few starts will kind of, keep him at bay, maybe between that 80 to 90 pitch mark. But then after that, I think he's going to go be a dog. He's going to go get those, he's going to go deep into games, 6, 7 innings if he's on that night. And I think he's going to be right around that 100 to 130. However, I wouldn't be surprised if he has another stint on the IL.
Yeah,
he's had some history in the past. That's why he was on a leash last year.
Right.
And then you have the shoulder inflammation. Inflammation is an injury that can obviously return very quickly. Very interested to see what Bryan Woo does this year. But I think when he's on the mound, he's going to be good. Can he stay on the mound?
Yeah. Hopefully he can. Obviously, the goal for the Mariners, of course, this season is just if you have to have a pitcher injured, don't let there be more than one guy hurt at any given time, because Hancock, that's fine, right? You can put up with Hancock. Yeah. You don't really want to get to the point where Dallas Keuchel is starting games. You don't really want to get to the point where Austin Voth has to stretch back out into being a starter, and that's probably the next 2 guys. So if Bryan Woo does get hurt again, it would be really unfortunate for him, but maybe it'll happen. He did get hurt last year too, so he's 2 injuries in 2 seasons now. Kirby, I know, has been dealing with some ankle, I believe, which is is it knee or ankle?
Foot, I thought.
Foot, somewhere in his leg. Kirby's been dealing with pain, but he's been working through that, so that's good.
You'd rather see it in his leg than his arm.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
So, Levi, there's obviously the we're talking about Bryan Woo obviously right now pitching, but Seattle, the big struggle has been offense.
Yeah.
And a few trades have been kind of circling around. Mm-hmm. A lot of those trades involving either Bryan Woo or Emerson Hancock. Obviously, I think Woo is more valuable.
Yeah.
If you ask any guy that they would say Woo is, to what degree, definitely varies person to person. So, Levi, what would you need to trade Bryan Woo in these next couple months? Because obviously, if he has a good few starts, then maybe his stock goes up a little bit. If he does poorly, maybe you trade Hancock or you trade Woo and then bring up Hancock. What is your mindset as far as trading a Bryan Woo or an Emerson Hancock, especially if Bryan Woo does good in these first few starts?
Well, to trade Bryan Woo, I need to see that Emerson Hancock has improved in AAA. I mean, I'm not trading Woo unless I really truly think Hancock can give you as much or better value, and I don't think that's the case. I know there's fans who would tell me I'm wrong about this, but I don't know, man. I see Emerson Hancock pitch, and he scares me. He gets hit really hard.
I totally agree.
He does not have those secondary pitches. So if Hancock goes out there in AAA and the pitching lab is able to give him that next pitch, give him that step up, maybe take his velocity even up a couple miles an hour, then you're at a point where, okay, maybe we do trade Woo and bring up Hancock. But honestly, I'd rather trade Hancock. And let's say just completely out of the blue, the Blue Jays are shopping Vlad, and we're like, we want to go get Vlad.
Yeah, or Pete Alonso.
And we offer, let's say we'll give you Clase, Hancock, and Aiden Smith, right? I think he's AA outfielder, Aiden Smith, like a number 11 prospect. Let's say they give him that, and they say, we want Smith and Clase, but we want Woo instead of Hancock. That's a tough decision.
I say no.
I would probably say no as well. Now, if
Hancock, I say yes. So that's, I think, the
right, exactly,
how much they are valued.
Ultimately, it depends on the player. Like, if you're trading for Kyle Tucker, then yeah, you probably do give up Bryan Woo for Kyle. I've seen the Marine Layer Pod guys are really on for Kyle Tucker right now, and I would be happy to get him too. But
Tucker's a great ball player.
So it depends on who you're trading him for, and it depends on.
Because he's been struggling.
Yeah,
he got benched the other night.
He did. Well, I still think Pete's a little bit better than Vlad, so that's a tough call.
You think Pete's better than Vlad?
It also depends on in July, what's the difference between Pete and Ty France, right? And then you make that up and say, is Pete
completely different players?
If Pete is 10% better than Ty France, but Bryan Woo is 10% better than Emerson Hancock, then that's a wash, right? You just you added 10% at first base, but you've lost 10%.
Yeah, there's a lot of variables.
Right, exactly.
To this, and it matters a lot about how Bryan Woo performs in these next few weeks, how Emerson Hancock does in AAA, but in tonight's game against the A's, priority number one for Bryan Woo is give the Mariners a chance to win.
Exactly.
Do you think he'll be able to do that in this first start? I think he will.
Particularly, I know the A's have been good lately, but the A's still don't have a great lineup. So I think at worst, Woo probably gives up 4 runs, and if you give up 4 runs against the A's, you have a chance to win.
Yeah, I would agree. I think he needs to get through those first few innings, like I said.
Yeah.
He needs to get settled in a little bit. I think it's going to be a lot on Cal calling those pitches behind the plate, assuming Cal's starting today. Hopefully he is. And
should be.
He should be. Watch Sebi start now.
I think Sebi started on Wednesday, so Cal should be in today.
Yeah. But I'm very excited to see Bryan Woo because every time Hancock stepped on the mound, it was definitely an uphill battle. It was iffy. It was let's hope the other team is cold, not necessarily let's hope Emerson Hancock, is hot and strikes out a bunch of guys.
Yeah.
When Woo gets on the bump, it's okay, this guy could dominate today.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a legit possibility. Is he the worst of our 5 starters? Sure. But I think he has a lot of upside for a number 5.
Yeah, I agree.
And,
the fact that he's our number 5, like Hancock is a middle-of-the-road number 5. Woo...
Hancock's a border, bottom
Woo
of the
could
line
be...
5.
Woo
Hancock's
could be...
unlucky.
Sure, yeah. I would agree with that. Woo could be the best number 5 in the league.
True. Yeah.
There's a scenario where people are like, wait, he's their number 5?
He might be the best.
He might be.
Now. I mean,
it's hard to say that when he hasn't pitched yet.
The Mariners have so much depth, 1 through 6. The problem is they had no depth after the 1 through 6, which is why people are like, oh, let's just trade. Like our starting pitching is so good, and our 1 through 9 is so bad. Let's get some starting pitching to then elevate the 1 through 9. That makes sense on a very primary level, but when you dig a little deeper, it's like, well, there's only really 6 guys that are here. And then there's such a huge gap from Hancock to whoever's next. You could argue there's a huge gap between Woo and Hancock. So you could really argue there's 5 elite starters for the Mariners. And if you get rid of one of those 5 guys, now all of a sudden your depth at that starting position it's shot. And even if you get a Vlad or a Pete Alonso or even a Kyle Tucker would be one that would be more lenient on trading one of those 5 guys for. But then it starts to become the Mariners could potentially do something, but it's hard to tell.
Yeah, and of course, Logan Evans has been pitching really well in Double-A, but again, it's hard to really.
But
he's not there yet. He's not ready yet, and so now if he's pitching to a 1.5 ERA in July, and you're like, we really do think Logan Evans could be a part of this rotation in September, then again, that's when you do trade. But right now, I'm more focused on what is he going to give us, and we'll talk a lot more about trades in July.
Yeah. And we will talk about the A's game tonight. We are going to be there. We might have some live reactions.
Yeah.
Try to do a post game, either there or a little bit later at our house. Hopefully there though. And yeah, that kind of finished up our talk about Bryan Woo. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. It really does help us out a lot. Levi, you got anything for us?
As always, guys, go Mariners, and good luck to Bryan Woo. Congratulations.